Good morning. During May, we've been telling stories about the mission field. Now, Becky and I have had some time on the mission field too, so we would like to share with you some of the things that we found. Now, one of the things that sticks in my mind is the fact that Aussie dollars go so far in some other countries when you go to the mission field. Not all countries, but particularly the Asian countries. It seems that Australian dollars will do so much more than we could do in Australia. Now, to just give you 3 examples that we found. Not so long ago, we were on a missions trip to the Philippines. And over there, they had a place, an area that they'd been given where they were going to build a building. And half of the floor was in concrete and half of it was in dirt. And we said, so what will happen to this in the wintertime? And they said, oh, we'll only be able to use the concreted part because the other bit will just become mud. And we said, there were a group of us there, and we said, so how much would it cost you to concrete this other bit? And we thought they might say thousands of dollars. Well, they came back to us, they worked out how much it would cost them to do it, and one of the people in the church who was a taxi driver, so if he had to give up days driving his taxi, and they came back and they said, oh, Pastor Noel, we are concerned about this, but it's $350, because to them that was a huge amount of money. And so we were saying, and in the team we were in, we said, we think we can do that. And so we'd been saving some money, and we put some money aside, and some others in the team said, I'd like to be part of that. And so we gave them the $350, and you know, we were getting on the plane to come back home, and they were doing it with a hand mixer, mixing it all by hand and laying it all by hand, that we wouldn't even think of doing here. Oh, you get ready mix concrete. But they were doing it all by hand, but we were just getting on the plane to come back to Australia, and they showed us pictures of it being done, and it was completed. And when we got back here, and I shared with builders back here the dimensions that it was, they said, depending on who did it and the demand of how much work they had on, but that could cost up to $4,000 here in Australia. So we were just amazed. For $250, we could do that much work, and it meant that then they could use that whole building, not just half of it, for all of the year. And they were going to use it for a church and a school and a community centre. So multiple use, we could help so much. Another thing that we did on a missions trip is that we bought guitars. We went into a place in the Philippines, and they had quite good guitars with quite good tuning heads that would stay in tune, and so we could use them to do praise and worship wherever we visited, and they cost $60 each. Now, that's not a lot of money in Australian dollars. Usually here, to get a decent guitar that'll stay in tune and will have a nice tone to it, probably the minimum you pay is $400. But these were quite good, and we went, and Gavin, who had come with us, and we were doing the music whenever we went. So when we went to these places, a couple of places that we visited, we said, look, we'll use the guitars. Oh, they're beautiful, beautiful guitars they are. And they said, would you like to have a play of it? Yes, and they picked it up, and they were very musical, and they could actually play a lot better than we could. So when we finished the time there, we said to them, this guitar is yours. Well, they couldn't believe it. One of the people cried. He couldn't believe it, because they'd been, any guitars that they get, and sometimes they're playing a guitar that's got 3 and 4 strings on it because the strings are broken and they couldn't afford to replace them. So that's another thing that we found. It was like giving a $300 or $400 guitar away, and they only cost us $60. So that's another little story. And a third one, we went into an area, we were down on Mindanao, and we went into an area right out in the villages and in the highlands area, and we had to walk up into this village, and we had a meeting there, and I just sensed in my heart there was this one person in the congregation. It was like God just put a circle around him as I was preaching a message, and I felt God gave me this impression, I'd like you to give him $40, because we'd saved some money to go there to be able to give away. And after the meeting, I went over with the pastor, and he couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Tagalog, his language, but we gave him, Becky and I gave him this $40, and he began to cry. And we went back to the pastor and said, "Pastor, can you come and translate for us? We've upset this guy terribly. And I think we've insulted him." When he went over and he talked with him, he came back with a big smile. He said, "No, they are tears of joy, because this man is from another village, and 3 days ago his family ran out of food. And he's walked 2 days to get here because he was told the missionaries were coming. And then you giving him that $40. Now, $40 isn't much at all in Australian. What can you buy? How much food can you buy with $40? He told the story. He said he would go back to his village and he would feed his family, and he had a big family with 8 children in the family. He would feed them for 2 months. Now, 40 Australian dollars, he would feed them for 2 months. So they're just 3 little stories to encourage you that sometimes you might say, "Oh, look, I feel I might be too old, or I don't feel comfortable about actually going on the missions trip." But you might say, "Look, I could give, but I haven't got thousands of dollars to give. I've got tens of dollars or 50s or hundreds." Well, can I encourage you, give that money to somebody else who is going on a trip, because so much can be done with Australian dollars. So be encouraged. It's just another little story from the mission field, and it's another way that you can get involved.